I'm here to talk not about what I've done in the past, but really how to look at what you're developing, look at the products, the applications that you're looking to create, and find out ways that you can then get other people to use them and experience them. So it's kind of marketing, but hopefully you'll see more. So the main title for this is How do you make interactive campaigns work? How do you make marketing campaigns that you do online or on mobile effective and functional? Another way of looking at it, of course, is, there's a clicker. What is a fish? Particularly, what is the genetic thing that ties together all fish? What is the definition of a fish? I'll come back to that later. So, obviously, you've had great ideas. You're putting together into an awesome application, and you want to put them on an app store or Google Play or the marketplace or wherever it is, and you want people to use them. Now, the very first thing to remember is that that app store is not a marketing channel. It is merely a way for people to be able to download or get your product. They will not discover your product there. It is extremely hard. There are hundreds of thousands of applications out there. Yours is one of them. So there's a whole line of stuff you need to do between your customers and your app to make sure that people can get it. First thing is advertising, which I'm just going to touch on here. The next one is getting people to talk about it. We'll call it PR for the sake of argument, but it's really just allowing people to find out and chat about it and discover it. And the final one is making sure that when users or customers have this application, they can then pass it on, the information to other people. So lots of people use different ways to do it. So products where everyone pays, like Amazon, where they download stuff, or Netflix or Halo, they tend to use mainly advertising to communicate it so that people can understand it. And they use things like search engine optimization. So when somebody's actually at that moment where they're looking to buy something and they type it into their search engine, what comes up is your product. Other products where some people pay, so when they use the thing called freemium model, so some people download it or get it for free and some people pay for it, you use this sort of technology, this sort of methods as well, but you also use things like partnerships and word of mouth to be able to get people to discover this potentially free product and then get into it and start exploring it. And then when somebody else pays, so things like Google or YouTube, where it's paid for by advertising, again, it's primarily around word of mouth that allow people to discover what's going on there. So these are just very top-line ways that we can find out how this works. However, advertising in the digital space and the mobile space at the moment is not very effective. If you look at mobile, because that's my area of expertise, and I've created probably hundreds of applications for brands and various points. And I can say that from personal experience, but also from talking to other people, most applications do not work as a way of selling products. So if you create an application to sell something, or to communicate it, or to market it, most of the time, 80% of the time, less than 1,000 people will download that application. So if you take, for example, somebody who's launching a car, and they decide to build an application to launch that car, they will maybe spend between 50 and 100,000 pounds on an application to tell you about that car. If they only get 1,000 people to download the application, that means that the cost per acquisition, so the cost it's taken through that campaign for you to be able to find the application and then download it is £50. Now this is quite standard. This isn't just an anomaly, which means that as a marketing channel, it's massively expensive. So, why do people do it? Well, there was a quote that I got from the CEO, from the boss of an advertising agency that specializes in mobile advertising, who said, a return on investment doesn't need to be good. There just needs to be a return on investment, which means that if somebody pays an advertising agency £1 million and that advertising agency returns 20,000 customers, we showed before, those 20,000 customers are proven in a way that advertising, as in on television, cannot prove it. So if you can show a return on investment through advertising, it's effective. So how come it's so bad? How come it's not working properly? Well, it's mainly because of the process that marketing agencies go through when they're trying to create campaigns. Now, you know all about things like lean and agile in terms of producing a product. They're the ways that people do things now. Advertising and marketing agencies don't. They still apply models which are quite old-fashioned and are very focused around pandering to egos of various people within their own companies and clients. One of the biggest egos in any marketing agency is the creative director, so me. But hopefully I'm here to say, you know, there's a chance to be able to move it on. So how does it work? Well, when you come to an agency and say, I want to sell my product, sell my application, they will then say, okay, well, we will just give it to our strategists, who will then go away and they will study the marketplace and they will show behaviors and they will show how these things work, and they will come up with a thing called a brief. But everything they're doing is not proven, it's a guess. So these strategists will produce a brief, which is the piece of paper they then hand over to the creatives, and say, here you go, this is what I think needs to happen here, but it's a guess. Then that brief will then be given to a bunch of creatives who will sit around in a room and they will shout at each other for about 3 hours. Very ego-driven. The people probably with the best ideas are the ones sitting back and doodling to themselves. But it's the ones with the loudest voice who are shouting. And what they come up with then is sort of a top-line creative idea that they think will sell your product. A guess on a guess. And then finally, it will be given to a creative team who will then put that creative idea into some sort of execution. Sometimes it leads to brilliance. A lot of the time it leads to kitten videos. Just the way it goes. But then finally, and this is the problem, when it's presented to the client, it's presented as a fait accompli. This is it. This is complete. This is all you need to do. My junior creative at my previous agency described it as unicorns on surfboards. It is the dream. The trouble is, it's not right. But if you say to the client, I don't know, the client will say, well, I'll go to somebody who does. So therefore, you're in a catch-22. So what is a fish? Well, I think the key thing here is that there is no such thing as a fish. There is no genetic example of a fish. It can be anything. Starfish, mollusk, etc., all count as fish. And, sorry, this was stolen from Stephen Fry and QI. Apologies for that. But the key thing here is that a campaign, an interactive campaign, is not something different. It's what you have made already. It is a product in its own right. So when you are considering marketing your product, you have to think of the marketing campaign that you are producing as a product as well. And nobody knows that product probably better than you. So what's your need when you're looking to create this product? It's incredibly simple. You just need to reach as many people in your target demographic as possible. You just need to get people to engage in it with a way that is fun and exciting. And you need to create an easy way for people to get in and buy what you've made. Simple. So what's the customer need? Well, that's even easier. They are looking for the cheapest, the most effective, and the most relevant product that fulfills what they're looking for. And if you're that, providing they understand the message that you're communicating to them, they will buy you. So how do you make sure that what you're creating, the product, the extra product you're creating as a campaign, will fulfill their needs? Well, I could go on a very long time about this, but I know ultimately there are 7 very simple things. You have to make sure that the campaign you're doing matches the way you want your brand to speak. It has to match the strategy of the brand, and it has to match the tone of the brand. So if you are producing an application which is very friendly and very focused and very communicating to the people that you know, then make sure that your communication, your marketing matches that. You also have to make that campaign lean. So you have to start testing little bits. Put out something, put out a minimum viable product, find out if it works, find out if it drives people to your application, does what you want it to do, and then change it, move it on, iterate it, learn from it, do all the things that you would do as you're developing a product. The next thing is make sure when you're talking about your product, it is integrated. So therefore, when you are talking about it on Twitter, it is the same message, maybe slightly altered, but same message as when you're talking about it on Facebook, as when you're talking about it in maybe mobile banner adverts, or on some sort of landing page you've created, or, we hope, when you get interviewed by the press and they're asking about your product. Make sure that they're all tied together. The next thing is about making it real. By this, I mean, don't just assume that if you put up a few banner adverts which will drive people to download your application, people understand what your application is. You have to consider the brand. You have to consider what it is so that people understand it. And you have to get out there and communicate that through various means. That will not be reached through normal advertising. That will be by going on television, by maybe creating a fun little app to advertise it, by creating general PR communications. The final point is making sure it's visible. And this is really simple. If somebody types in what your app is into Google, they need to be able to see it when they click go. If something about your application is local and they're looking at it on their mobile phone, when they click go, they need to know that your product is right there for them. You have to make sure people can see it. And when it comes to creating a campaign in mobile or in online, you have to make it over and over and over again. Do not assume the first thing you come up with is the right thing to do, or the second, or the third, or the 10th, or the 20th. Keep going, keep going, keep going. Test it, trial it, find out what works, and then when you get a secret formula or stuff starts to work for you, you know that you're successful because your application is in the hands of millions of people. Thank you very much.